Hello and welcome to our roundtable discussion on more secure employee authentication with Passwordless MFA today. My name is Gerhard Zehethofer, Head of Marketing at the IC Consult Group, and I'm your moderator in today's session. But now let's welcome our panelists, Shimrit from Secret Double Octopus, Gerhard from ForgeRock, and Stefan from IC Consult. Please, Shimrit, would you mind to start to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Shimrit Tzur-David. I'm the CISO and co-founder of Secret Double Octopus. I have a PhD from the Hebrew University, and actually the original idea of Secret Double Octopus is based on my postdoc research. Secret Double Octopus actually provide passwordless authentication solution to the enterprise. We can provide a solution for each and every service in the enterprise for any environment, if it's cloud-based or hybrid or totally on-prem. I think this is one of our major advantages. And I'm here to elaborate a little bit about us and, about all these interesting subjects.
Thank you. Let's go next with Gerhard.
Thanks, Uli. Yeah, glad to be here with our two key partners, Secret Double Octopus and IC Consult. My name is Gerhard Zehethofer. I'm with ForgeRock, and in ForgeRock I have responsibility for technology partnerships and also for our IoT go-to-market. That's basically the non-human identities. But here today we'll talk about more the human user. And I love technology, but often technology makes people's life difficult or miserable or insecure. And this is probably the single biggest reason why I love so much to be with ForgeRock. Our mission is to help people to safely and simply access the connected world. And in order to help our customers and the end users to do that, we have a leading identity and access management platform that's very scalable, very comprehensive in functionality, and like Shimrit said, we support all enterprise use cases, whether this is on-prem, as a service from the cloud, or in any hybrid configuration.
Thank you, Gerhard. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Uli. Hello and good morning. My name is Stefan Lutz, and I'm joining today's discussion from my colleague Heiko Klarl, who is unfortunately on sick leave at the moment. I'm working for IC Consult as a manager in identity and access management for around 7 years now. And I've been helping organizations with identity access and API management challenges throughout the entire life cycle. Our ambition at IC Consult is to support our customers throughout the entire, product lifecycle or project lifecycle of an identity and access management solution. So from the introducing part, the design of the process landscape, to IT architectures, integration, software development, or even cloud managed services and 24/7 operations, we deliver everything from a single source and from various locations around the globe. Working closely with our partners such as ForgeRock and Secret Double Octopus, we've even solved the most complex problems for our largest customers and are proud of customer relationships for over 20 years now.
Thank you, Stefan. Before we start the discussion, just a few organizational things. So I will guide you through the discussion today with a few questions to the panelists. For that, we planned about 45 minutes so that there should be enough room for questions at the end. Please feel free to put your questions at any time in the questions panel here in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will pick them up at the end. Whilst the whole roundtable, everybody is on mute, and we will also record the talk so that we can share it with you afterwards, and feel free to share the recording with any colleague of you. Now, I wish us a lively discussion with many interesting insights. Let me start with the first question. So why are people talking about passwordless today, and what are the possibilities for it, and why now? Gerhard, what is your view about this question?
Yeah, good question. So no one wakes up in the morning scratching his head thinking of where can I type in my password. So people are fed up with using passwords. They are complex because of, ever new policies that need to be rotated. That is not user-friendly, but it's also not secure. It's also a security issue. Actually, more than 80% of the breaches are due to compromised credentials, either weak passwords, stolen passwords, lost passwords. So MFA is a good alternative, but can we do better than that? Because MFA fixes the security issues, but it doesn't fix the usability issues. Some of these keys, they make you do the speed and copy test. Can I copy fast enough correctly to type in the one-time password? And so in essence, I'd like to say the best password policy is the one that's not needed.
Stefan, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Gerhard. Totally agree. The thing is that in addition to that, the way we work, and especially from where we work, has changed significantly in recent years, not least due to COVID. Home office workplaces become more and more, more and more regular than it was the exception before. And this also reflects in the attack scenarios that we have to deal with, or our customers have to deal with. The countless types of access to corporate network have significantly increased, like mobile devices, laptops, working from home, working on the go, stuff like that, have all brought new attack surfaces that must be protected in addition. Our customers are therefore looking for kind of a long-term solution that can be integrated into the existing security landscape without increasing support costs in operation. Shimrit, you would like to add something to that?
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with my friends here that COVID-19 really emphasizes the need for passwordless solutions, and the attack surface is actually now bigger than it ever was, and we can see it with the popularity of ransomware attacks lately. So the need is clear for almost everyone. If 2 years ago on sales meeting, I spent like several slides only for motivation, today potential customers actually ask me to skip these slides. They understand the risk, they are ready to have a secure and user-friendly solution, and they are ready now. Now, we heard lately about Microsoft going passwordless. These are steps in the right direction, but in order to answer a real organization's need, a passwordless solution should have much more than just, providing a solution for the easy cases like cloud services or web services. Many organizations have also legacy services, and usually other integrations are needed. Now, another aspect is how users approve authentication requests. There are many user-friendly options to authenticate. Maybe the most popular way today to authenticate is with mobile device that we're okay with us, but this is not the only way. Today, since FIDO authentication is now become very popular, if the solution supports also FIDO, we can use any FIDO token as an authenticator, and this can provide solutions for cases where mobile devices for some reason are not an option. And with our solution, for example, if your laptop has an embedded fingerprint sensor, in some cases, you can use only your finger to authenticate. So for the user side, there are many options to authenticate, which make it easier for users to adopt new solutions. On the server side, this is a different story. In order to have the same solution across the enterprise, you would need a solution that has integration with a variety of protocols like SAML, LDAP, or Radius, and actually many more.
Great, thanks for these answers. That brings me directly to my next question. What is passwordless precisely? Let's clear up what it is and what it isn't. Maybe address misconceptions at the same time. And this time, let me start directly with Shimrit. You are muted.
Yeah. So there is a confusion, and a lot of people actually using the term to describe a range of things. And to us, passwordless has to be true passwordless. The user never needs to remember the password ever, in any case, at any point of time. And this is hard to do in reality. And actually, in Secret Double Octopus, we accomplish it through a unique patented approach that actually integrates with directories such as Active Directory, but also others. And by rotating random passwords for the users, we enable a true passwordless solution. Now, this is different than what many people associate with passwordless, like Mac Touch ID or Windows Hello, or even like password management tools, where the password is simply saved encrypted, and after the user actually identified himself, the password is decrypted and used for authentication. Now, what will happen if the user replaces the password on one machine? Let's talk about Windows Hello, for example. I changed my password on my machine. Now I wish to authenticate to another machine. With Windows Hello, the user will have to know the password and type it in the second machine at least once. So this is not a passwordless solution. Even generic solutions like FIDO cannot provide a solution across the enterprise. FIDO is perfect for web services, when we can use the WebAuthn API. But what would happen if you want to authenticate your VPN? Can you do it with FIDO? I doubt it. Or if you have like legacy services, FIDO cannot be a solution for those cases. So if I would need to summarize it, I would say that don't confuse a real passwordless solution with passwordless experience. With passwordless solution, the user never needs to know the password, and the solution should provide passwordless authentication to all the services across the enterprise.
Thank you. Gerhard, would you like to add anything?
Yes, and I'd like to, I agree with all these points, but there is another aspect to it that we sometimes get in discussions with potential customers, and that's the security aspect. So it's not less secure than multi-factor authentication by no means. Actually, it is sort of a multi-factor authentication, and it beats passwords in every aspect and in every scenario, because a password is a shared secret. So it can be lost, it can be stolen, as we've elaborated in the previous question. With passwordless, only tokens are more or less transmitted. So from a security perspective, that also beats the common password use cases.
Yeah, well, and besides...
Back to you, Willie. Sorry.
Thanks, Ken.
Go ahead.
And actually, besides the technology part, we do see a misconception when it comes to, well, let's say, the whole rollout thing, how to start and where to start. A misconception in that belief is that people think it's an all or nothing implementation. The passwords must be removed immediately from everything and everywhere once they start with passwordless. This makes the hurdle of switching to passwordless unattainably high. We try to break this down on help our clients by developing a roadmap of the customers taking a step-by-step approach. For example, the first step could be including special user groups or applications that require special protection, and then successfully go one step by Nineveh. So it doesn't have to be a shot at once. You could always start and go through a step-by-step approach, which makes it way more easier.
Great. Now let's have a bit of a deeper look into it. So about a month ago, in September, Microsoft announced that they would go fully passwordless as a company. Why are companies adopting this? What is the benefit from it? And what use cases could be solved by going passwordless? Gerhard, please would you start?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. And I let Shimrit elaborate what is true passwordless and what not. But yeah, why spend time and money and jump through hoops if there is nothing in it? So the benefits really should be, and the benefits are improved security on the one hand, which is important for organizations, of course, but it's also better user experience, and that's important for the enterprise as well, because if you have happy employees, it's much easier to attract good talent, but it makes the employee also more productive, because now there is not the test to copy the token into a field and do it within a certain period of time. what is important in terms of passwordless is you need to have it across the enterprise for ideally all applications and use cases. And that's more of a challenge than doing it on, you know, a Windows or on a Mac computer. Shimrit, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with everything. I would like to add here that besides security and user experience, which are for sure very important and maybe the most important things to consider when adopting passwordless solution, I want to add here the cost consideration. You know, the average number of times a user calls the organization help desk is 11. By Gartner, 30% of these calls are actually password reset calls when the user forgot his password. Now, by Forrester, each such call costs the organization around $25, which takes us to almost $1 million that is spent for these calls for organization with 10K employees, which is not a large one. And I didn't even mention that downtime, you know, when the user is out of the account, which also costs money to the organization. So, and I want to add another thing here, you know, for those who won't adopt passwordless, you know, solution for security reasons or for user experience reasons or for cost considerations, they will adopt it because you know, regulation will force them to do so. And I believe it won't take long for that to happen.
Yeah, and don't forget to the point that it helps a lot in securing that extended attack surface. Well, multi-factor passwordless in particular helps a lot by protecting those multiple ways of accessing your corporate network, like all the VPN connections, the cloud applications, legacy ones, mobile applications, and so on. So it's not just lowering support by providing a uniform way to authenticate to your company. It also helps to really secure those ways of accessing it.
Perfect. Now we know more about the why and everything else, but what are the challenges involved with these types of solutions or deployments? Stefan, would you like to start here?
Sure. One of the most things we've seen is the complexity of the environment. Many organizations today have very complex hybrid environments spread across cloud and on-premise systems, modern applications, legacy ones, and so on. Besides that, there are various different user communities like blue collar, white collar workers, suppliers, external workers, etc. To achieve what the technology promises, well, like going passwordless, but all the use cases around authentication that come from that infrastructure and community needs need to be covered, and you may create a bad user interface if you don't cover all of these use cases. So overall, by implementing this, you're still implementing authentication technology, which needs to be, well, in place 24/7. So you have kind of technology and user parts which sum up to a complexity, but it helps still a lot if you just slice down the elephant and create a strategy roadmap, follow up the rollout plan, and go step by step. Gerhard, any thoughts on that?
Yes, and you know, the other aspect that you need to look at this is the tools that you have already installed. Is the identity stack that you have in play usable? And you know, what devices do you have there for your employees? Are you using Mac and Windows computers of the latest generation, or is there still Windows 7 around or a terminal somewhere if worst comes to worst? Is it compatible with your, you know, single sign-on solution, your IDP, or do you have multi-factor authentication capabilities already within the organization? And yeah, most companies, when we talk to them, would like to leverage some of that in their existing environment instead of ripping and replacing everything. And certainly there is a phased approach that makes sense, and it requires a lot of planning, and maybe we come to that point as well later in the discussion. But coverage is a very important aspect, and Stefan stressed it, and I can't agree more. it is very important to have all the applications covered. It doesn't make the employee's life easier if he doesn't have to use the password 5 times a day, but just once a week and then doesn't remember it. So that is an aspect that needs to be addressed, maybe not in one step for all the employees, but over time in a meaningful period. Shimrit, any comments?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything. You know, if we're talking about large organizations, they have complicated environment, which might be a barrier for some solutions. You know, many vendors can solve the easy cases, but if the architecture is quite complicated, it's going to be difficult. You know, if we're talking about on-prem AD, on-prem services, legacy, you know, it's going to be difficult. Now, you may say, like, everyone is moving to the cloud, but a recent report shows that actually 60% of the authentications are made for legacy applications. So for those organizations, a simple SSO solution cannot target all the needs. And another thing is, as you also mentioned, if the organization already has one MFA installed, like ForgeRock, for example, you know, one way for us, like if we're talking about Secret Octopus, one way for us is to come to the customer and tell him, okay, you know, you should throw everything you have and install our solution instead. You know, there is a big chance that the customer will throw us out of the office instead, you know, before we will throw something that he invested money and time in. So, you know, any passwordless solution should be able to integrate into existing solutions, existing environments, and not replace them, or not necessarily replace them at least. Now, another thing that you mentioned, and I totally agree, is about the journey. You know, going passwordless is a journey. It's not that you cannot expect to implement a solution today and going passwordless tomorrow. There is going to be a transition period, you know, and in that transition period, you know, some of the users or even some of the services won't be immediately connected to the solution. And you should verify that these services or these users, you know, do not create security holes in that period. Another thing is, you know, when we're talking about ideally, at least, solving or providing a solution for all the use cases, I think we should mention here also offline mode. You know, you're in a flight, I know you don't have internet connection, you still want to log into your PC, to your workstation. So a solution should be able to provide this use case as well. And the user experience should be the same for the online and for the offline mode. You know, the user sometimes, you know, doesn't even have to be aware to the fact that there is no internet connection around. And the last thing, and you know, maybe I don't know if it's the most important one, but it's very important one, you know, to be able to answer all the exceptions, you know, like what if the user forgot his phone? What if the user doesn't have a phone or doesn't have a smartphone, you know, and all these exception cases must be also targets on a real solution if we want to actually provide a solution to our real enterprise.
Totally agree. Having heard that, where do you see the must-haves when going passwordless, and what are the critical success factors? Stefan, would you start?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we already heard it from Gerhard. The planning is one of the most important things. You need a clear roadmap and what you want to implement and when. The deployment itself is not that hard. It's basically installing another tool. But you're changing the way the end user interacts with your company. So I totally agree with what Shimrit said. You need to take the user on a journey. You need to provide them with the resources they need, like potentially videos or points of contact. They need to feel well comfortable and have the user experience they need. Otherwise, passwordless could be kind of difficult to adapt. So it helps a lot to just slice it down as well and start with smaller roll-up pilots and smaller groups, and then just take it on and leverage the user base and make bigger groups out of it. Shimrit, you might know some some additional parts from your experience.
Yeah, actually, specifically with authentication solution, especially one that provides workstation login, it's actually in the core of the organization day-to-day work. So I think the first must-have a secure and robust solution. No downtime, no failures. It has to be, of course, like best security that we can imagine. And this is the first must-have that I think that the solution should have. Another thing, I think we already mentioned that, a one solution across the enterprise for all environment. And, we're talking about cloud, hybrid, and on-prem. In some cases, some customers wish to have like a closed environment, like they do not want any component in the cloud, any server in the cloud. So, a solution must have also an answer for also this kind of environment. Of course, we talked about it, friendly user experience for all users, for all use cases. When I'm talking about all users, those with a phone, those without a phone, those that works in a lab, when there is no internet connection, those who work, on web services, for everyone. Another must-have is, I just mentioned that in the previous answer, integration with third parties MFAs. Latest report saying that 60% of the organizations actually have some kind of MFA installed. Maybe not for all services, but they do have something installed. And a good solution should be able to integrate to those MFAs. And when we're talking to some customers, some of them are not really ready to adopt a passwordless solution now. So it might sound weird, but sometimes in order to sell or to implement a passwordless solution, you must have a password-based MFA as a first step. So when the customer will be ready, we can shift him easily and quickly to the passwordless solution. Gerhard.
Yeah, agree. And you brought up a very important point. And, Stefan said earlier, proper planning is important, and I agree, and everyone knows that. But in this case, with passwordless, what I consider very, very, very important is testing the setup with a subset of your workforce. You may categorize your workforce in different cohorts. Are they technology savvy or not? What types of devices are they using? You don't want your CEO stranded, not knowing what to do. And there is so many corner cases with passwordless. Like you mentioned it early, I forgot my phone. I have a new device. The device is not enrolled. I'm in a new location. All these things need to be tested. And so from my perspective, it's very important that it's rolled out in steps and is tested to all the corner cases. And you can simulate and test as much as you want, but you need to roll it out to the employees and test it in real life before you roll it out to everyone.
Thank you for that answer. So let's come back to a question that was already asked earlier, where we heard that passwordless is a form of MFA, even being a little bit different. Let's get into that again. Is password really more secure or any better compared to traditional MFA? Gerhard, would you start here?
Yeah, I can try and describe it. It really is like an MFA solution, and you usually type in your password and then an additional factor, and then you're sent off to your phone and hunt for your phone. In this model, you still involve the phone generally or some other capabilities, as Shimrit mentioned, but you don't have to put in the password. And it's basically login-less, and there is still the other factor, and there is the possibility to step up security for certain activities. It's always something you have, something you are, or something you know. But when there is no password, it also cannot be transmitted, it cannot be stolen, it cannot be lost. So it is secure and is much more user-friendly than any other way of accessing the connected world. Shimrit?
Yeah, actually, traditional MFAs, which are actually password-based, are better than just using username and password, that's for sure. But if we're talking about the problems with passwords that related to passwords, actually almost all of them are still exist with password-based MFA. If we're talking about phishing, for example, you talked about security, so let's talk about phishing. When we are typing our passwords and the hacker actually succeed to steal these credentials, so it still exists because we are typing our passwords. And there is a white hacker that showed that for he just prepaid card, and he was able to redirect all the phone calls and SMSs from the victim mobile device, actually from, I think it was T-Mobile, to his own device, and this way to steal all the SMSs. So if we are using like as a second factor something like SMS with a first factor, which is a password, then the security, we are truly compromise the security of the organization, and this is actually a major concern. So security, as Gerhard mentioned, is a real problem with passwords. If we're talking about the costs that I actually mentioned earlier, still all these password reset calls are still there with passwords. User experience, again, the user needs to remember, type the password, and I even heard some of the traditional MFA vendors saying that since they provide a second factor, the organization can compromise the password policy, the password length and password complexity. And I think that this is a very dangerous approach, because it actually means that you are totally giving up your first factor and you are left with only one factor, which is your second factor, whatever that be. But this is not what you meant when you want to implement an MFA solution in your organization. So be careful for advices that you get, and please go passwordless. This is going to be the easiest, most secure, and user-friendly way to authenticate today.
Okay, thank you. So let's start wrapping up. But before that, I want to address another important thing here, and that's about ransomware, which is really all over the place right now. So how can technology like this help with threats like ransomware that are on the rise today? Shimrit, any thoughts?
Yeah, actually, we just had a webinar with SentinelOne and Lenovo about this. And there are two main approaches to deal with ransomware attacks. One is prevention and the second is recovery. Both are needed, and passwordless actually falls under the prevention approach. And most account takeovers attacks actually start with using some credentials, stolen passwords, and hackers do not care if you are a hospital or some consulting company. They just want to make a serious damage and make their victims pay. So they look for organization with cash flow, and it would be, and one that it would be easy to attack. And these are the only requirements in these specific attacks. So there are billions of leaked credentials out there, and out of these credentials, hackers are likely to find one account, and this is all what they need, one account that could be used to breach a system. And and now account takeover or credential stuffing attacks are now the bread and butter of the hackers too. And they usually will start by installing credentials to connect the service via RDP. And once connected, they will try to download the malware. And once they succeed to do so, then you are done. So having a secure passwordless authentication solution, by having one, you keep the attackers away from your network. They will simply go elsewhere because they want to to find the easy way to connect to a network, and if it's difficult, they will just go away.
Thank you, Stefan. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, thanks, Shimrit, for the great example. I want to take that up. You might remember the Colonial pipeline that was hacked by the end of April or starting of May this year. And as Shimrit said, you just need to find one account. In this case, it was just a single password that was sold on the dark web. It helped the attackers to come through a VPN connection that had no MFA enabled. So in fact, they came in very easily without the need of any special breach or something. It was just a single user account and password. Well, in the end, it caused a downtime of more than 5 days. I don't need to say that there were massive costs involved with the whole recovery thing. And at this point, a simple thing like just a second factor or even going passwordless would be the solution, where they would just have the additional need to just breach that one as well, and they might just gone away if it would be in place. So sometimes just the simple and small things make the change.
Thank you. Gerhard, do you have to add something?
Yeah, and there is countless examples out there. There's another one, the Oldsmar water supply in Florida. And I'm not going to go through the details. Those in the audience that are interested, you can find them in the internet. But it was another one where basically credentials were misused. It was a remote desktop application. And so, as Shimrit said, the absence of passwords help to prevent ransom. Not the ransom itself, but that it can happen though someone gets access to the network and moves vertically and laterally and gains access to things that bad actors should never have access to. So not being able to basically steal a password makes the situation much, much better for any organization. And I don't have much more to add, and we all know security is not a switch that you flip and it's never absolute. But as Shimrit said, and this is very true, you just need to be a little bit better than your neighbor. This is like two people walking in the forest and the bear attacks them, and you don't have to be faster than the bear, you just have to be faster than the other person. And that analogy also applies to security. Back to you, Ulrich.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gerhard. So as we are nearing to the end of the event, and I would like to have some time for questions, maybe a short closing word from each of you. Let's begin with you, Shimrit.
Sorry, I was muted. You asked like a closure sentence, right?
Exactly.
So I think when having like when an organization needs to choose a passwordless solution, there are two major things to consider. One is, of course, the security of that solution and the security and user experience. This is as one thing to consider. And the second is, the coverage of if that specific solution actually targets the organization needs. And when we're talking about security, many vendors, you will hear the same pitch from many vendors. But as a customer, as an organization that need to choose a solution, you should look carefully on the details.
Thank you. Gerhard, over to you.
Yes, yeah, I ditched passwords all these sessions, so I think this is really beyond passwords. And I couldn't agree more with Shimrit. When you select a solution for passwordless, but also for your identity and access management platform altogether, it's not a rip and replace. Look for something, for a solution that has the capability to meet all your needs. That doesn't mean you have to implement everything in one rip and replace, but select a platform that meets your business needs today and in the foreseeable future. And not just put a painkiller or a little band-aid around this corner and around the other corner. This is so important. And the COVID pandemic has shown us that a lot of stuff have been implemented in a rush. Now we don't know what's coming in the future, but we can try to prepare for the unexpected. And from my perspective, now is the time to put, a permanent and good and solid solution for whatever comes in the future. Oli?
Thank you, Gerhard. Stefan.
Yeah, well, first let me say thanks to everyone who's listening to our discussion today. I'll make it short. Let's take your chance and go for passwordless. The hurdle for it is not this high as you might think, but the benefits for sure.
Thank you. So thanks a lot to all of you. Now let's look into the questions we might have. So just taking a look into the panel here. There is already a first question. So how is this biometric dependent solution different from Microsoft Authenticator? I think that's a question for you, Shimrit.
Yeah, I think I talked about it a little bit earlier. When, for example, when you use, like, let's say Windows Hello, for example, and you're using your finger and you think you open your workstation with your finger, behind the scene, what happened is just, once you identify yourself with your finger, a password which is saved, encrypted on your machine was just decrypted and sent, for you to authenticate, let's say to Active Directory or to Azure or whatever. Now, this is not, this is not a passwordless solution. The password is saved on the workstation, decrypted, and sent. And I talked about it before. Let's say that the user changed the password, or the user sometimes has to change the password like once in 3 months or so. And once the password is changed, and now I want to log in, let's say with another workstation, then I would need to know my password, because this is no longer the one that is encrypted on the other machine and sent to authenticate. So those solutions, are totally different than the passwordless solution. I would call them passwordless experience and not passwordless solutions, because the user has to know the password. He actually, in many cases, the user actually chose a password. He needs to change it once in a while. He needs to remember the password. And, this is not a passwordless solution.
Thank you. So the next question, really similar to that. So Gerhard, why is passwordless better than good password managers using highly secure passwords?
I think Shimrit hit the nail on the head. There is still a password. It's basically a band-aid, a painkiller if you want. You use modern technology as a front end, but the flow itself is still password based. So it can improve the user experience, but it doesn't, and it may improve to some extent also the security aspect. Also because now you can have all the passwords that you don't remember, that otherwise you wouldn't have probably, and use your same password everywhere. So there is some merit to this, but it really doesn't cure the problem at the source.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. Does the solution remove the need for second factor or step-up authentication? Feel free to pick it up.
I can take it.
I start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think
Ladies first, Shimrit, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think all this, step-up authentication actually came from the fact that, actually they're trying to solve the user experience. Since, if you need to put your password and then you type some code that you got. So, for user experience, all these step-up authentication mechanisms saying, okay, if you are out of the network, then you need to put your SMS code or whatever. But if the passwordless solution is completely user-friendly, why do we need this step-up authentication? Because if, for each and every authentication, you will get the most secure and user-friendly solution, then I don't see a place for those, for those solutions, unless you're saying, okay, I want to have like a third factor, or I just, I saw that the user just, authenticate to the workstations to the workstation from Tel Aviv, and now he wants to authenticate to some web application from Beijing. So for those specific use cases, maybe we need to add like a third factor. For all the usual cases, I don't find it, necessary.
Thank you. Gerhard, do you want to add anything here?
Not much to add. As Shimrit said, there may be some cases where it makes sense that specific transaction, that very confidential information that's accessed, where you want to have also for the user itself to give the comfort level and say, now I'm accessing this. What we also find is completely login-less experiences also don't create the expectation the user wants. The user accepts to have some friction for accessing very specific applications or data in an organization, and there may be very good reasons to do that. But when you have a good solution that is within the spirit of zero trust, you don't have to put the icing on the cake for every transaction.
Thank you. So next question here is, what happens if your phone is hacked? Will the application be compromised? Something for you, Shimrit?
Yeah, I would say that, like a good solution. So the application won't work if the phone is rooted or jailbreaked. In our solution, if this is the case, the app won't work. So this is something that any solution should verify that, the app cannot work on that kind of phone. Now, if the phone is stolen, which is a different use case, or before the phone is stolen, also another thing to make sure that nothing can be stolen from the phone, even if it's hacked. You shouldn't save anything, in a way that even a rooted or hacked phone, you can take the information from it. So this is another thing which is very important. And actually, it depends. Even if it's Android or iOS, there are ways to secure information. There are the enclave or the keychain. There are ways to secure your information, also if the phone is hacked, but no way to use a hacked phone. And if the phone is stolen, it must be very easy to just, turn off the device for authentication. So this is something, that IT or, someone at the help desk must do it very simply.
Thank you. So another question is here. I saw a mention of eliminating the threat to standard encryption from quantum computing. How do you do that?
Okay, so actually this question, I think it was directed to Secret Double Octopus exactly, because we are using a scheme called secret sharing to secure the channel between the mobile device and the server. And with that scheme, on top of the traditional encryption, the asymmetric encryption, we are using that scheme to on the fly generate a random symmetric key with that scheme. And this scheme is known to be quantum safe. This is actually a protocol that is used today to protect the launch code of the nuclear weapon in the USA. So yeah, instead of just encrypting a key and send it over, the server randomly generate like many pieces of information, split the key with secret sharing, send it in multiple routes to the mobile app. The app construct the key again, and this is like a quantum safe mechanism. We didn't invent it, of course. We're just using it.
Thank you. Very interesting. Another question here is, can you explain why it's safer compared to long passphrases and harsh security policies if we are able to keep them?
Gerhard, do you want to take it? Or should I?
Yeah, I can. And feel free to add. Yeah, a password is a password is a password. You can have better passwords, and you can use a different password for every application and for every account, and you should. And I have to confess here, I'm in this industry and I'm reusing a password every now and then. So it doesn't do away with that problem. Now, having a password manager and using long passphrases is better than using, you know, a short password and not a unique password. But at the end of the day, it still is a password that can be stolen, that can be misused, it can be lost. So yeah.
Yeah, I would just add here, you know, if the password is too complicated, then the user, you know, he won't be able to remember it. Then he probably will write it somewhere. So you know, if Gerhard talked earlier about something you know, something you have, something you are, so it's supposed to be something you know, but it's, you know, it's actually something you have because it's written down. And this is one thing. And another thing, you know, sometimes when we're talking about a complicated policy, you know, if I'm taking the first letter and capitalize it, and I put a number by, you know, at the end, and put even some special character, it doesn't mean that I have a complicated password. It does mean that my password actually passes password policy. And this is another thing to consider. It doesn't mean that no one can guess it.
Thank you very much.
It just makes the user experience worse, and it's harder to type in, and you may lock out yourself more frequently. Doesn't mean that an algorithm cannot come up with that one. Fully agree. Sorry, Oli.
No worries. Interesting talk here. So at the moment, I don't see any further questions in the panel. So I think we come to an end. So I want to thank you all for being here today for this really interesting discussions, and I hope all the attendees also get some interesting impressions. And I would really look forward to discuss in any further meetings with you. So that concludes the event. Thanks again, and I wish everyone a nice lunch or afternoon. Thanks a lot, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks you. Bye.
Bye.